It's the bag.
Nice to see everyone. Fortunately, you all know me very well, so you'll forgive my label on my glasses. So, Elizabeth Southerden Thompson. She was later become Lady Elizabeth Butler. But while I talk of her early paintings, and she was painting under the name Elizabeth Southerden Thompson, I'll refer to her as so. She achieved wealth, success, fame, as no female artist had ever achieved, all in the Victorian era. The Victorian era, of course, was the era which Queen Victoria was Queen of England, of Britain. The Victorian era, a time of great expansion, of great wealth in Britain. The cities grew, industry grew, technology grew, education grew, but with the belly of England swelling, so its underbelly grew too. Of course, there was terrible poverty in England and Britain. 3/4 of the population were working class, were poor, and there was crime, there was disease, the slums grew. We all know our Dickens, and I think Dickens played it down. Victorian England was basically controlled by class and gender. And gender, of course, women were very much regarded as the chattel of men. They were a passive element of society as far as the patriarchal element were concerned. They were to lie back and think of England. A woman had very few legal rights. So, really to put it into context, it was considered improper for a woman to have knowledge of her body by the chattering classes, and if a woman had knowledge of how she gave birth, it was really not something a woman needed to know. Well, into this atmosphere, into these times, Elizabeth was born, and she chose for her life to be a military painter, and she became the first female military painter in the world. England has only one military painter, and it is a woman. Edouard d'Étal, the French military painter, said, which must have really upset the establishment in Britain when he said that. So her paintings, well, crowds actually fought to see her work. Police had to be called to keep the crowds back from the Royal Academy, to keep them from pushing in on her paintings. Galleries, collectors fought for her work. She was actually sued by galleries because on occasion she was not ready to show the work, and she had contracts with them. Really, to put it into context, I could say Lady Gaga or Madonna, in that her fame caused such outrage amongst the establishment. It was really considered not the done thing for a woman to have a profession, any profession, let alone military painting. She was a painter of violence. She was a colonial painter. She worked for the establishment, but she was more than that. She was one of the first social realist painters. And there wasn't actually, it seemed to be almost ignored by the establishment, but she was a social realist painter. The social realist painters were painters who painted life as it really was. So up until this stage, military paintings had been full of uniforms, of generals, of the generic soldier, the generic battle, shiny buttons, prestige. And she painted the battle from the working man's point of view. And of course, many people in the army, if not the majority of the rank and file, joined the army because they had no choice. It was the only way they could work. And she put this into her painting. She painted the individual man and the battle trauma that he suffered. And of course, remember, there was no TV, There was no films. The only visual art was music hall, theatre, dance, but painting. Painting was king, really. Great for us painters. Today her paintings are in the Tate Britain. Her paintings are in Tate Leeds. They're in the National Gallery, Melbourne, the National Army Museum, the Royal Collection, last but not least. And I recently attended a bidding war at Sotheby's on one of her paintings, and it went for way over the estimate. It was really quite a fierce bidding war. The establishment were determined to get her painting. And of course today she's regarded actually as a feminist icon. There was a play that toured in 2023 called Modest, and it was about gender roles being fluid. I mean, yes, it was about her fight to establish herself in the establishment as a female painter, but she was presented as an icon for the fight of gender fluidity. I'm not sure she'd have thought of that, but nevertheless, you know, she's still regarded as a feminist icon. I'll just read you what she said about war. She said, "My own reading of war, the mysteriously inevitable recurrence throughout the sorrowful existence of humanity, is that it calls forth the noblest and basest impulses of human nature. I never painted for the glory of war, but to portray its pathos and heroism." So in this lecture, I'm going to look at some of what I consider to be her best paintings. As I say, some of them are violent. Some of them did celebrate colonial Britain, but the majority of them were social realist paintings. And you'll see in the progression of her paintings, you'll see an artist's struggle to come to terms with her own consciousness and conscience. So, early childhood. Well, Elizabeth was born into a wealthy family, which is great for any artist. Her father inherited money on the condition that he did not work. So he brought up his children. He had two daughters, Elizabeth and her sister Alice, who also grew up to be a feminist icon, but of the day. She was a suffragette, and she was a published essayist, and very well known as a suffragette and also as a poet. She was a very famous poet in Victorian England. Her father dedicated his life to educating his girls. He educated them in, of course, the arts and English literature. She was obviously a historian, Elizabeth, and also languages. She spoke Italian, French, and the Catholic liturgy. She was a religious lady, and she always said that at one stage she came to a crossroads in her life, and she had to choose between religious paintings or military paintings. And she chose military paintings. I believe she was a very astute lady, and she had her eye on the cup. Well, from a young age, she was known to sketch, and she was drawn to painting military men. Her early sketchbooks are full of pictures of soldiers. Of course, at the time, throughout Europe, there were wars throughout Europe. Britain was involved in some sort of major offensive every 10 years for 100 years. And her sketchbooks are full of military men. She, at an early age, she enrolled in her mid-teens. She enrolled at the South Kensington School of Art. It was a South Kensington Female School of Art. There were two levels in the School of Art. There was elementary and there was advanced. The elementary level she found very unsatisfactory. There were art schools in every city and town in England at the time to cope with the demands of the Industrial Revolution. but she found that she was constantly being put to task, drawing, design, patterns. There was no fine art at all, no oil painting at all. She left the South Kensington Female School of Art and she travelled with her parents in Europe, which she did extensively throughout her childhood. And there she enrolled in an academy. Now, there are a few painters here, but I'm sure you're all aware that art education was best got in the 19th century from the studios of artists. And she enrolled in a studio in Italy and studied with an artist the works of the great masters and their techniques. And she learned a lot there. She then returned to England and enrolled again in the Female School of Art, the South Kensington Female School of Art. And there she was at last admitted to the Life Room. Now, the Life Room was, you wouldn't believe the fuss over the Life Room in Victorian England, mainly because women were not allowed in Life Rooms, and female artists considered the Life Room a major part of their artistic education. And if I just show you, this is one of many petitions that was put to the artistic establishment. This went to the Royal Academy of Arts, and it was petitioning for the right to attend the Royal Academy of Arts. Women were not allowed to attend the Royal Academy of Arts until, I believe, 1880. A woman finally tricked her way in by signing her work with her initials and not putting Miss, and the Academy had to bring her in and accept her. But until then, women were not allowed to study at the Royal Academy of Arts because the Royal Academy said at their Life Rooms nudity was not something women were allowed to be confronted with. And so they said that it's just not proper for a woman to study in a Life Room. Well, this unfortunately is slightly blurred, but it's quite extraordinary, really. These women are actually almost, they're so humble about their application to attend the Royal Academy. And the Royal Academy refused. The petition refused to allow them in. This one was in 1863, an academician has written. There was further petitions. There was one in 1880 as well, asking just for the right to study. They said these ladies, and this petition, by the way, is from the South Kensington, the Female School of Art, the South Kensington School of Art, but it's also they circulated amongst all the art schools in the UK, and they just said, you know, how can we study art? How can we raise the calibre of art if we're not allowed to study it? The Royal Academy turned it down. Now, the Royal Academy today has 50-50 members, ladies and men, but then not so.